Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and this is my Sunday chat, a chance for me to have a chat with you, go back and have a look at the week that we've just had and look at what we've got coming up in the week ahead. And of course, we've got Christmas coming, and I've got a couple of things in the can. I'm going to tell you about those in a minute, but I'm not 100% sure how the rest of the week pans out. Never quite know. But let's go back and have a look at what we were up to last week, shall we? Or the week that's just passed. As you may remember, lovely Julia and I went out and had a look at a Motte and Bailey castle in Horsham. And I can hardly believe that there was a castle in Horsham. I used to live in Horsham. We had a little investigation or a stroll around, an exploration, I should say, really, of the landscape where this Motte and Bailey castle was to the north of Horsham, near Littlehaven, and on the, I suppose, Holbrook or Holmbrook. And I'd lived in Horsham and never knew it was there. And I believe actually subsequently I discovered that Hugh Braun had discovered this in 1935, looking out of a window on a train. The whole area is surrounded by trees now, but when he was there, it wasn't. And so he was able to see the landscape and presumably think, there's something interesting going on there. If you walk around it now, you'd have no idea. There's got this little stream that goes through it, but it's a fascinating place. Anyway, so we did that. So do check out that video if you missed it. In the afternoon when we were filming that, we went to Rusper, and that was the next day's. That was Tuesday's video. And we had an interesting look around there. Well, I didn't know anything about Rusper really, but the church is beautiful, and some of the wonderful architecture, the timber frame buildings and the hung tiled at the pub, I think the Star, is absolutely wonderful, beautiful, exquisite really. So I put out this plea that if anybody knew anything about it, please get in touch. Well, I'm very pleased to tell you that somebody has, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we can get the communications going and we will go and have another look and have a sort of bit more informed walk round, which would be absolutely fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that. Probably in the new year, get Christmas out of the way. People are very busy. So that was superb. You may remember that in the week I was looking and doing some reading of this book, Rambles Round Willow Farm. And we did 2 days where I sat in front of my fire. When I say my fire, as somebody said, I think Nigel Sadler, who's a regular viewer, said, that's not a fire, that's a furnace. Yes, my wood-burning stove. I sat next to that, positioned myself by the fire so it would look nice. You could watch the fire rather than look at me as I read out a couple of chapters from this children's book that was published over 100 years ago. What was fascinating is some people were thinking, wait a minute, is this a real book or is this one by that legendary author Philip Mercer? If you don't know anything about Philip Mercer, I don't want to ruin it, but go and check back some of the videos that I made and you'll hear that there are some, or see rather, there's some stories by Philip Mercer, who wrote Tales of Old Sussex, allegedly in 1834. Let's not ruin the story too much. Now, I was asked to read this. This book was sent in by one of my viewers, Erica, and she said it would be lovely for you to read that and show some of the wonderful pictures. And there are some fantastic pictures in here. Unfortunately, not every chapter is illustrated, so it didn't. I wasn't able to show as many pictures as one would like because the chapters are actually not all, as I say, not all illustrated. There's a nice one, and let's see if I can find you a nice colour one. But it goes back to the days 100 years ago of farming and what it was like and what people did manually. And it's a fascinating story aimed at children, and yet it's incredibly well detailed. Now, people have asked me, would you be up for reading more of it? And I thought, well, probably wouldn't sit very well on the existing YouTube channel, The Bald Explorer. I do another YouTube channel called The Vobes Show, which is an archaic, fun, silly, chatty show. It's done live in midweek, and I told you about it last week. And thanks to everybody who signed up for that, by the way, or subscribed, and I hope you're enjoying it. I do want to grow that channel. But it did dawn on me that maybe there would be a market, so to speak, for, or an interest for another YouTube channel related to the Bald Explorer, in which I take some of these older works, these old books that really are just sitting on shelves doing nothing, and read them in small little chunks. I know that there are a number of people who would love to hear more, be reminded of the old days in this wonderful, simple language. So that's something I'm mulling over with, but I don't think it would sit quite well on the Bald Explorer channel, although it'd be a very useful thing to do in the winter, of course, when one can't get out and about. So that's that. Talking of books, I went over to Liss in Hampshire to see my friend Liz Housden, or Elizabeth Housden, who's just finished her trilogy, a smuggling trilogy, all set on the Isle of Wight in the 18th century. And I did a lovely interview with her. She's very keen to make a trailer video that will promote the books and also promote the video to the media in terms of a television series or a film. And she'd asked me if I'd be interested in getting involved and helping her to do that. So we had a long discussion about that. And whilst I was there, she did an interview with me, and that went out, well, as I record this, yesterday, but this is Sunday, so that went out on Thursday, I think, or Friday, can't remember now. One is so prolific, I can't always remember when I put these videos out. But anyway, that's when it was. And it was fascinating insight into an author, how you write, and the research that's went into it. So if you missed that one, do check that one out. That'll be in, as I say, a couple of days ago, which was really interesting. And I have been out and about in Worthing, very fascinated by architecture and styles of architecture. And of course, when I'm doing my walks, you're walking through beautiful scenery, the landscape, heritage of buildings in the landscape, sometimes through villages, sometimes through towns, and so on. And knowing more about architecture is something that I want to understand and learn about. This whole process actually of making these videos is teaching me. And it's wonderful when people make comments, because I make mistakes all the time. You know, I'm very fallible. And so it's great when people write their comments in and say, oh, Richard, did you know actually that's this and this is that, and there's a nice book about this, and so on. And so I was, if you saw that one, you would know I was worried about the process of our towns changing and the type of architecture that's coming in, that's making the towns lose their sense of identity, and so that you can go from one place to another up and down the breadth of England and not really feel that actually these towns and villages are anywhere different or special or unique. So check that video out, and I'll be interested in your comments on that. Not everyone, of course, is going to agree with me, and that's part of the fun. In fact, you know, if everybody agrees with me, there's no fun at all. It's great that people will say, actually, Richard, you know, this is where I think you're wrong, and this is where I agree with you, and I think this, and have you considered that? One of the great things is people do get in touch, and they do not only put their comments and things, but they advise me about other books and things that I might be interested in. Now, the week before last, I went back to my childhood and went to a farm, and I've been looking at this about the land grab and the new builds that have been popping up all over, overwhelmed by the response of people who are also worried about the changing nature of the landscape. And somebody suggested a book called Real England. Well, I've read that now. I love my books. I absolutely adore books. The Battle Against the Bland. And it's a fascinating book written about 10 years ago about people who have had various problems in their community with big corporations taking it over and ripping the heart out and putting in its place buildings which do seem inappropriate and bland, and stopping rights of way and all sorts of things, and closing down things that were for generations in our tradition. One of the trouble with me and books is, you know, that this book will then mention somebody else, and they've written a book, and I'll end up going on to the internet and having a little scrounge around and see if I can find the book they're talking about. And there's a fascinating book which I'm looking forward to. I bought it as a Christmas present to myself, It's by Robin Page, who is a critic of the modern world, I suppose. And he's got this book. He wrote it a while ago, but he's updated it fairly recently. The Decline of the English Village. And you can imagine that's right up my street. And I'm fascinated to understand and learn about something, the village, that has been in possession for generation after generation, and I'm worried because so many villages have lost their purpose, their heart. That when people left the land and went to live in the towns, the villages have become I call them the ghetto of the rich, because and I don't mean, it's not the people who live there's fault, it's just the way society seems to have gone, that the people who've lived in a village for year on year on year can no longer afford to stay in the village, and their children can no longer afford. And these villages now, the houses in these villages, the prices have gone up so much that only people who are earning megabucks can afford to go into the country rather, and into these villages. And it's a very sad state, and it's worth remembering, I think, from a heritage point of view, where we've come from and our roots. And something like this, and 100 years ago with Willow Farm, our roots and what it is to be English. And I want to investigate, particularly in 2020, what it is to be English in this brave new world. Now that Brexit is happening and we're going to be standing on our own, I think we've almost got to remind ourselves of our identity. And part of the Bald Explorer, looking at heritage, landscape and nature of this wonderful country, of which I'm proud to be a member of, that's some of the stuff that I want to have a look at and continue looking at our heritage, landscape and nature, and understanding my roots and what wonderful things we have. So I hope you'll join me for that. But meanwhile, next week, some interesting stuff. Running out of time here. We're going to be looking at, gone back to Kim Murden, who is a herbalist. She's going to tell us the benefits of garlic. Had an interview with her, and also storytelling. Fascinating interview with Kim about that. And also she gives us a flavour of the stories that she tells. She is a storyteller. But I don't want to tell too much about that, but something to look forward to, and of course hopefully something at Christmas. There may be the Bald Explorer's Christmas message, you never know. Thanks so much for watching. That's the end of today's Sunday chat. Take care, and I will catch up with you in the week, of course, if you enjoy the videos, and then another Sunday chat at the end of the week. Have a fantastic Christmas in the meantime, and I'll talk to you then. Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe. Share the channel, tell people about it, really helps, and I'll see you next time. Take care, and bye for now.